Welcome to the African American Issues Forum, sponsored by the Horry County Democratic Party as part of our recognition of Black History Month. We're delighted to present an outstanding panel led by community activist and writer Dameion Fowler. Joining him are Verlene DeWitt, a retired educator, Pastor Thomas Dixon, former candidate for U.S. Senate and community activist, Shakidra Jenneret, mother of 5 and school board candidate, Alester Linton-Pryor, second vice chair of HCDP, and Brandon Counts, vice chair of the Young Democrats of Horry County. Our thanks to HCDP's Communications Committee for organizing this event. In addition to this video, you'll find articles on our website, horrydemocrats.org, reporting on the key content of the discussion. Now, here's HCDP Chair Don Kahn.
This is a critical election year, and these issues are going to help to inform us on positions. So, Dameion, take it away. It's yours.
Happy to have everyone here, and I look forward to a very productive and vibrant discussion. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go around the table and have everyone introduce themselves. Okay, I'll start to my left.
My name is Shakidra Jenneret. I actually ran for Horry County School Board in 2018.
Yes.
Seems so long ago. But my organization is called I Am Enough, and what we do is we empower and encourage minorities. It's an inclusive organization, but that was our primary focus, was to encourage and empower minority families. Our motto is, if you change your logic, it'll change your life. And I am here today to see what I can offer to help us bridge this gap that we have between races, whether it be in schools, with the police, in the job force, politics, whatever it is. I'm just here to do my part to help bridge this gap.
Alester Pryor, I'm the second vice chair of the Horry County Democratic Party. I'm just here to participate.
I am Brandon Counts. I'm the vice chair for the Young Democrats of Horry County, and I'm just here to participate as well, get involved in some good discussion and see how we can brainstorm plans to help improve things and situations for African Americans here in Horry County.
I'm Verlene DeWitt. I'm president of North Strand Democrats, and I'm a retired educator, and I'm here to see how to learn and to see how we can improve participation, especially among minorities, in voting in South Carolina, in our county.
I'm Pastor Thomas Dixon, former candidate for U.S. Senate 2016, just coming off a campaign for mayor of North Charleston. Unfortunately didn't win, but that's all right. I'm a community activist, advocate, organizer, and somebody who believes strongly in social justice and the creation or holding fast to the principles of our nation and holding those who have the power to uphold those principles fast to their obligation to uphold those principles.
We're going to get started. Time is of the essence. So the first question I want us to discuss, and I'll read it here. When the current president of the United States was running for office, he asked Black America a question. What the hell do you have to lose? My question is, our first question for tonight is, what have we lost? And what can we lose with having our current president serving another 4-year term?
Well, as an educator, I see the opportunity for access to quality education being diminished because under his administration, his Secretary of Education is promoting, and it's actually a case in the Supreme Court right now, to privatize education. And when you do that, African Americans tend to lose out. They sometimes end up in, especially when you're using vouchers, from my experience, they end up in underperforming schools worse than what they left. Our students are, what do they have to lose as black? Dignity. Being negatively influenced with bullying. Trump thinks it's fine to bully, but if students do that at school, they're being punished, kicked out, and then that starts the school to prison pipeline for some students. And I'm very concerned about that. And African American youth, about 30% of them are affected by that. And once they get expelled or whatever, then they get in touch with juvenile justice system a lot of times. So all that leads then to negative impact for African American youth, and especially males.
I think one of the talking points that President Trump pushes down is about, African American unemployment rate. And, looking here in Horry County, number one, there are no decent jobs for African Americans or African American males to go to. So you might be unemployed, but you're underemployed. You're not being paid what you're worth. And I think that that's one of the things that as a party we need to start pushing back on. And we need to start pushing back on it very hard. Because if he continues this and people keep on picking up this talking point, I shudder to think of how that's going to affect the election when it comes in November. Because people will just continue saying, well, unemployment is low. But no, you're working now 2 to 3 jobs. Like, is it worth it? So I think that's what we have to lose.
But I think we have health care to lose, right? Ever since President Trump's been in office, he's been focused on getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. One reason why a lot of people go to the emergency room is because they don't have access to a primary care physician, okay? And then you compare our country to other countries, you have people that are just really sick and they wait and wait and wait until they finally go to the emergency room. And their chances of getting well as quick as they could have greatly diminished. And I just see our health care, access to health care, we have that to lose, as well as education.
Yeah, I think housing is going to be an issue. 'Cause first of all, the guy that's over HUD right now, he has absolutely no idea what he was doing. And I think there's so much gentrification going on everywhere, including Horry County. I see it all the time. It's in areas like Longs, is the one I'm seeing it in the most now. I see there are a lot of communities popping up around Longs that don't necessarily represent Longs or pour into the core community of the Longs area. It's almost like when you go to Georgetown, on one side of the train tracks, you have houses that have gas lit flames on the outside, and on the other side, you see condemned buildings, empty storefronts, worn down homes. So I see Longs becoming that. And I feel like another 4 years of Trump will lead to less housing for African Americans. And it's difficult now for us to find spaces where we fit, even in communities that we have grown up in a long time. I've spoken to my friends and family in Brooklyn, New York, and it's like one thing that touched me is my friend said, we grew up in a community and we got kicked out, and now they bring us back to work for them in this community. Their parents work in homes for these people who have torn down the apartment buildings or taken brownstones that they once owned, and now they're having the police called on them in their own neighborhoods because all of a sudden they don't fit. So 4 more years, we'll find ourselves with less spaces where we seem to belong.
My concern is the suppression of the vote, the African American vote. And that to me is very important because it not only affects our country, it affects the communities that we live And I don't know how we can, unless we elect people that are gonna take care of our vote, we are at a process of losing everything that we worked so hard for. Casting a vote is more important to me than anything else in the world. People died for us to have votes. And I'm not only talking about African Americans, I'm also talking about women who lost their lives in the process of voting. And that's part of democracy. And that's what scares me, the way Trump has suppressed the vote in so many of the elections, that we don't pay attention that it's important that we get people elected. And I don't know how we go about reaching our young people to get them not be apathetic, and even seniors and older African Americans, they're sitting home, sitting on the fence. And to me, it's critical that we get out and vote, because unless we vote, we lose everything.
It was so disappointing to hear senior citizens say, does it matter? And I might go to vote, or I might stay home. I mean, literally say that, and that was in the 2018 election, where we had a larger turnout. So if we can get rid of that apathetic attitude and spirit, even when you talk to them, it's just hard to shake it. I don't.
We feel so beat down. Trump has just felt, unless you're active and do it, he has beat so many people down with his bullying, the negativity, his divisive actions and talk. And so it's hard for people to pick themselves up. And so a lot of voters are so depressed and disgusted with who we have in the White House, and they, again, for not understanding how important their vote is, they don't vote.
And let me just chime in right quick, because, and you're absolutely correct, but, and let me start with a preface to this, that I am a Democrat, okay, and I'm a solid Democrat, and I stand with the blue. But our leadership is silent on the issues of Donald Trump, where they should be actually more vocal, aggressive, and leading in the community on addressing the issues, because this man is, first off, he's a pathological liar. Everything that was accomplished, and I mean, it wasn't just a comprehensive list of accomplishments in 8 years under Barack Obama, but there were accomplishments for the people made during that time. And he's taken every opportunity he can to roll them back and then couch them in the smoke and mirrors to make himself look like he's done these things. The unemployment issue, using those fudged numbers based on how many people are at work, not how many people have a quality living wage on their job. When you have 2 and 3 people working 2 and 3 jobs, it's going to increase the numbers and make it look a lot better. But then again, the entire trend on turning the unemployment issue around started under Barack Obama. He's just reaping the benefits of it and taking credit for it. And his party and those who back him, they continue to push that narrative forward without checking the lie. And until we, there are many of our leading minds over the years have always talked about silence being consent. And we look at our Democratic leadership, and they're virtually silent on these issues instead of addressing them. And, I come from the streets. I was 30 years in the streets of Chicago, gang affiliations and all that. I've been to prison, all of that. And one thing I know about a bully is you don't be silent in the face of a bully. Right. You address a bully, straight up. As a matter of fact, address him and then undress him. And that's how you really win this battle. So I would charge our Democratic leadership at all levels, the county, state, municipal, county, state, and federal levels, to be more vocal about it. Other than that, he's dismantling everything from the wage situation, education, gun violence, health care, environment, you name it. If there's a benefit for the people, this dude has cut it out. Or is trying his best to cut it out.
So let me ask this then: should we look upon Trump as an anomaly in an otherwise just system, or do we see Trump as a symptom of where politics in America is going? I guess, so, I guess another way to ask it would be, what caused Trump?
The election of Barack Obama. The election of, and I mean, I hate to put it, I mean, because when Obama was elected, all those people that said they were so liberal and so, oh, I believe in all this, a lot of them found out they really had sheets in their closet. And when President Obama got elected, it put a lot of fear into a lot of people. And they felt what they were entitled to as the white American male and female, that was going to be stripped from them from President Obama. And believe it or not, fear caused Donald Trump's election. It wasn't that people were that, America, democracy and stuff, or that he was a man of the people, but fear. Listen, they're going to take your guns. They're going to do this. They're going to do it. It's always a takeaway. It was never saying, well, President Obama gave you health care. He kept you from the depths of depression. And yet and still, you're not saying, well, I'm going to ride this wave. President Obama did so much to keep this America alive and democracy alive. But those people that felt that democracy, their democracy was going to be taken away, they got fearful. And so he could play to those fears.
I understand your point, but I think I'm gonna have to disagree.
Okay.
Respectfully. I think it wasn't Obama. I think it was our inability to come together during Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders during that whole primary season. I think there was a big breakdown in communication as a party. No one actually stood up and united the party to get that particular candidate elected.
I tend to disagree respectfully.
Well, because I think
because if you have somebody that stands up and says to you when your president is elected, you're going to be a one-term president. You have somebody that blocks everything that he's trying to do.
Right.
All that time. I mean, I understand about us being divided, that Bernie did not do what Hillary did for Barack Obama. However, the aftermath came, our division in the Democratic Party was not the aftermath of Trump being elected president.
Right, but I think we're currently seeing it now with this presidential election, where there's not a lot of enthusiasm with any of the candidates. There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm when it came to Hillary, because she had skeletons in her closet. She was very qualified to be president, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, she wasn't able to amass the same numbers that President Obama amassed in both his first and second elections. And so all of a sudden, now we had a weak Democrat running. You had this guy who was energizing the right of the right,
Yeah.
and the next thing you know, Comey drops this bombshell that he was still investigating Hillary 2 days before the election, and so all of a sudden people are more excited and like, hey, let me give Donald Trump a chance. Like, what do I have to lose by giving Donald Trump a chance? And they voted for him, and now we're stuck with him we've been stuck with him for these 4 years.
So I think that,
I'm sorry, but could we have expected the disaffected workers who were victimized by NAFTA to really throw their support behind the person who happened to be the spouse of the president who signed that, put that into action? Because we have people in these areas who supported Bernie in the primary, but they weren't going to support Hillary.
Correct.
They weren't going to support Hillary.
3 strikes.
3 strikes.
So my counter to you is, if Hillary or Bernie, if a stronger person would have run during that election, would Donald Trump have still won? And I think that goes back to your question: is he a symptom or is he the actual disease? Like, if there was a stronger candidate that would have ran against Donald Trump, maybe he wouldn't have won, and maybe we wouldn't be in this situation.
I think personally that the issue goes beyond, it goes farther back, as Mr. Pryor was saying, beyond the election of Barack Obama in 2008. Back to the roots of racism in America. because there are so many people in America, white America, that have this unconscious bias, this suppressed racism. They don't understand their own privilege. And the election of a black man actually brought that out. I happened to go to, my wife and I happened to be in DC right after Barack Obama's election. And the National Mall was filled with so much vitriol and hatred for Barack Obama. They didn't even know him. They didn't even know him. So what I'm saying is that this was already there in the hearts and minds of many Americans already. Added to it, and to your point, is that divide, the Hillary-Bernie situation that actually was really messed up. And there's some other DNC and DCCC things I could talk about, but that was another nail in the coffin of America. But it started with the roots of racism. That internalized racism that was denied for so long, kept in the closet for so long. I had people that I was on my ship with in the 80s that through Facebook, social media, we had reconnected and we were all doing great and everything until the black man won the election. From that point, I started like, who are these people? I didn't know these people. And they were just a microcosm of that innate feeling inside of white America that says from day one, we fear black people. We fear especially black men, and we definitely fear black men in a position of power. And so once Barack won that election, it was coming out everywhere. And Bernie and Hillary just gave, well, I'm not even gonna say them specifically, I'm gonna add in the DNC, gave them an additional fuel by dividing what could have been. Would we have been able to overcome? I don't know. I don't know, because racism is so deep and it's so, it's so deceptive to many of those who are racist, including black racists, because we racist too, I don't know if, I can't say that's the only part of it. That's definitely a part of it. And there are other factors involved in it. But a lot of what happened with that phenomenon was induced through racism, covert racism.
Well, I just think it's been given a stamp of approval. You were talking about whether it's an anomaly or is it with the way President Trump talks now. People feel empowered to come on out with any thoughts or any feelings that they have. And it was very much okay with the Medal of Freedom given to Rush Limbaugh. And I think that's promoting more of other folks to come on out again.
And anytime you have somebody tell the President of the United States while he's making a speech, you lie. That goes to show the disrespect that they had for this black man who was the President of the United States, an intelligent black man. So therefore the fear is more so because nothing scares that other side more than an intelligent black male. Because they supersede anything that they think they could do with limited. A lot of the times they make it on a little or nothing. And I think that when President Obama stood up the second time he won the re-election, that really scared him. The first time they said, well, maybe this is just a fluke. But to win it twice,
The second time, an overwhelming majority.
there you go. I mean, and we try to say that we've come so far. But again, that is embedded, as Pastor said, it's embedded. Racism is embedded in the United States of America.
Yeah,
And
I don't believe we've come so far, actually. I had this conversation with my 13-year-old who's in middle school right now, and she was discussing some things that goes on at school. And there are times when she shares things with me, and it's like she kind of brushes it off because it happens so often. And I have to bring her back to reality, like, don't get so comfortable with racism that it's just okay and you don't have to address it. And we were just saying that, wow, it's 2020 and we're still dealing with the same things that people were dealing with back in the civil rights era. And so I don't really think we've really come so far. I just think that as a people, we are less meek when it comes to things that our ancestors dealt with in the 60s. So for a period, people were less apt to come at us with things. But now with Trump here saying all these things, I mean, it's coming. It's like, okay, we've got to go ahead to be who we really want to be, and we don't. I think Trump is just saying and doing what other people weren't brave enough to do. When they say you get drunk, you get liquid courage, I think Trump is their liquid courage, because he gets up there and he says how they feel because they're afraid to. And he's not, I just don't think he knows any better, but he's not afraid to just say and do whatever. So I don't think we've come so far. I don't think much has changed. Much of the underlying things have not changed, and that's just my opinion.
I'd like to say something right there. What Pastor talked about, our leadership. Where are our strong black leaders? Where are the ones that used to coalesce around Martin Luther King or Fred Shuttleworth? Where are they now? Who do we have speaking for Black America that you say, yes, I believe in him. Yes, I can direct him. Without being swayed. Where are our leaders? Before, they took God out of the schools and everything, but before, our pastors used to lead everything that we had. We had civil rights meetings. You would be in church. They would have you getting ready to rally, to protest. They would teach you on sabbaticals on how to protect yourself during the movement. And now, where are they? There's been, where are our black leaders? That's what concerns me.
So we're going to cover that. We're going to cover that. So I want to, I want to stay on Trump for for a few more minutes. So is it enough just to get Trump out? Is it enough just to replace Trump with some politician who happens to be a Democrat? What needs to happen as a result of Trump?
Well, first thing, you have to realize that you need more than just a presidential change to get change in the way our laws and inactivity is taking place, really, in Congress. And also the attitude of people, okay? We need changes from our senators, House members. You need people on this local school board that are going to be advocating for change for our youth. I really believe that you've got to start local. And our chair here, he's mentioned we need some folks to run for local positions, and we do. Because once you get that local, your name out there, and you actually are doing something to improve the community, then that increases your chance if you want to later run for a higher office, like for the U.S. Congress or whatever. People know about you and know that you are for them and can make a positive difference. We have people right now just doing nothing but spewing and supporting poison.
I completely agree. Like, even if Donald Trump, God forbid, wins this next election, as long as we are able to retake the House, retake the Senate, that's where laws are made. That's where everything happens. Those are the people who are going to be nominating judges to the Supreme Court, or just judges in general. So I definitely think that we, as a party, we have to focus on that. I think the second part, again, is, like you were saying, focusing on our local state house. I think we're 6 seats away from taking the Senate here. And so finding people who are interested in running, and it would be great to find people who are a minority, African American, female, Latino American, getting them in and getting diversity into our state capital would be very beneficial. And then I think the last part is, when you look at Horry County Council, you only have like one black face there who happens to be a Republican. But is that really representative of how Horry County looks? Like, shouldn't we have 3 or 4 minority members on that, making decisions for what's going on, either if it's in Race Path or Loans or WAMP or Lures. And so it's really finding the right people to run, but then getting them energized to get in those positions.
And support. Because one thing I noticed about when I ran for Horry County School Board is what I dealt with Horry County schools, because I have 5 children. So what I dealt with Horry County schools is what prompted me to say, okay, something needed to be done. I never wanted to be in politics because I don't like to argue with people. But what I saw is, one thing I said when I made a decision to run, I gathered some people that I trusted, and I said, if I ever felt like I had to choose between being me and getting this title, I'm gonna choose me every time, because I worked too hard to become the person that I am. And when I wouldn't conform to fit in the perfect politician or the perfect Christian, I lost support because I just wanted to be me. And my stance was, being me got me this far. Why should I change now? Because I would be less than authentic in what I'm giving if I become who you want me to be as a politician, or who you want me to be as a Christian or a religious person. So the support that I had in the community dwindled because I wasn't afraid to speak truth to power. And what I found in a lot of Black people in Horry County, especially older folks, is they shy away from that. And because I'm not the person to do that, they kind of backed away. They didn't want to be attached or associated with somebody who was going to change the status quo or confront it. So if when we do find these people who are enthusiastic and genuine about wanting change and to do different, bring about change, then we have to then find the people who will cover them. And just little things, like I'm a single parent, I had children, so just little weird things started happening when I started running, which was weird to me. Like, my son started getting pulled over all the time for nothing. He was driving age. Certain teachers would just start picking at my kids or talking about the election during schools and stuff like that. And there was no one to cover us as I put myself out there in the front for the community. There was no one, I won't say no one because there was a few people, but the majority of the community did not cover us. And I believe that's why we don't have a lot of Black leaders now, because no one covers us. All of our leaders who were strong were murdered. No one covered us, and they were covered. Malcolm X was covered, Martin Luther King, they were covered. We're not covered by our own communities now, so there's a certain fear, even that I had as a parent, putting myself out front, saying that I'm gonna go against the status quo. We became a target. And so when we find these people, that we have to make sure that they're covered, and we have to make sure that we're being supportive.
What we're actually missing in the entire equation is the fact that old folks get old, and old folks have a tendency to hold on to status quo. Mm-hmm. That's what they look for: a certain thing, a certain image, a certain look, a certain value system. And if it fits anything outside of there, then they're not for it. Right. And we have to stop that. Mm-hmm. First off, with young Dems, we need to begin looking more for 18 to 40-year-olds who are out here ready to put grind in the political process. Mm-hmm. Recognize them, nurture them, and bring them on up to replace all of these old folks. And all due respect to everybody in here that's gray as me. All due respect, Oh, yeah. But, we can't keep hoarding, because that hoarding is what blocked you up. That's that feeling you get. Mm-hmm. It's like, they hear me, but they don't want to hear me. Mm-hmm. They don't want me here. And I know, because I've been there as an outsider with the state party. Mm-hmm. I've been there. And so just think about, we should be grooming leadership. We should be grooming folks to move up into these positions and to run for State House. We look at our leaders. Of course, there's the threat because they always take our leaders out. Mm-hmm. But we also got to look at the fact that, like, when Dr. King started, when Malcolm started, when
when Stokely Carmichael started, when all of these folks started, they were in their 20s. They were in their 20s putting in work. And they grew older. Dr. King was 39 years old when he was assassinated. Look at the body of work that he did before that. And here we are as older folks in the Democratic Party shutting people down. And they got great eyes, great ideas, great energy, and everything coming forth. And here we are saying, nah, you don't really fit my mold, you don't live like I would expect you to live. So
Charlie Rango worked with Keith Wright. Therefore, they're putting people in place. They're mentoring them to know how to go into the field when they're young. We have somebody here, Cedric Blaine Spain, who started young. He's knowledgeable. We have a councilman that sits in Myrtle Beach, and he's been reelected and reelected. Who is he mentoring? Who is he saying, come, I'm going to show you how to work this system. So when I go, I can now run for county office, and you can take my position as city council. Where is somebody that was mentoring you that could reach down to you and say, come on, this is how we're going to do this. This is how you're going to get elected. And you reach down, you get somebody young and mentor them. Because that's how they did. They were never left by themselves to fight.
So
History.
We look at a man, real quick, we look at a man like Dr. King, who in the prime of his life, in the late 20s, in his late 20s and 30s, who had this appeal to older people because they saw, man, this person here, he's charismatic, he's aggressive, he's out here doing it, but also because of his age, who else did he attract? People within his age group and younger. Exactly. So we have to change our mindset in order to make sure that we're bringing in all of our available troops in order to win this battle.
So we're going to dig deeper into this idea of leadership and the qualifications for leadership and the responsibilities of leadership. But I want to ask a question about voting, okay? And I want to preface my question with a quote from Dr. King in his last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, okay? On page 5, Dr. King writes the following: the practical cost of change for the nation up to this point has been cheap. The limited reforms have been obtained at bargain rates. There are no expenses, no taxes are required for Negroes to share lunch counters, libraries, parks, hotels, and other facilities with whites. Even the psychological adjustment is far from formidable. Having exaggerated the emotional difficulties for decades, when demands for new conduct became inescapable, white Southerners may have trembled under the strain, but they did not collapse. And there's the part where I really want you to listen. Even the more significant changes involved in voter registration required neither large monetary nor psychological sacrifice. Spectacular and turbulent events that dramatize the demand created an erroneous impression that a heavy burden was involved. The real costs lie ahead. The stiffening of white resistance is a recognition of that fact. The discount education given Negroes will in the future have to be purchased at full price if quality education is to be realized. Dr. King gets really bold. Jobs are harder and costlier to create than voting rolls. The eradication of slums housing millions is complex, far beyond integrating buses and lunch counters, okay? So my question is, what role should voting play in pushing forward a Black agenda? Should it play the most significant role, or should it share significance with other methods of pushing our agenda across?
You stumped everybody.
I mean, I might be a little bit biased as a Black person, but I feel like it should be the most significant thing, just because for so long it has been so insignificant. So if it became the most significant thing, it would probably at some point only make us level, but not I don't think in our lifetime we would see it where we are far above in anything. So yeah, maybe it would seem unfair to say that should be the most significant thing.
Let me put it this way. Let me add something else to that. And I'm glad you said that. Dr. Amos Wilson, the famed psychologist, he once remarked, and I don't know if this was tongue in cheek, but he once remarked that the stuff we did to get the right to vote was more effective than the right to vote.
You have legislators who go against their constituents
All the time.
to pass certain bills, like Obamacare we talked about, or the affordable health care, we talked about that a little bit earlier. You had junior representatives who said, if I vote for this might be my only term here. And sure enough, we ended up losing the House after Obamacare was passed. So I think it's, you have to get the right people in these particular positions who's going to share your values, your moral values, and who are going to say, hey, this might not be a popular move, but it's the right one morally, and this is what I'm going to do. So yes, you got to have constituents to go out there, vote for people to get change, to get the tides of change going. But you also have to have the right people in those spots who aren't going to come up and say, well, I'm just going to be a politician. Obviously my constituents don't agree with this. I'm not gonna go with it. And I think that's why we kind of are like stuck with Donald Trump right now. I mean, you have Lindsey Graham who said during when he was running for president that Donald Trump was a racist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, you name it, Donald Trump was it. And then all of a sudden it didn't poll well in South Carolina. So now he's like, Donald Trump is the best thing since sliced bread. But then you have people like Mitt Romney who said it in the beginning, like, hey, this man is bad. And then who's willing to step up and say, hey, this might not be the popular vote, but I'm going to go ahead and vote to acquit. So it's really finding the right people who share your values and getting them there and pushing the Black agenda into these positions.
What I was gonna say, regarding that voting, back in the civil rights movement, and Dr. King was there, he had an agenda. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. This is how we're gonna accomplish it. You had an informed voter. You had an informed electorate. That we knew this is the goals that we're gonna try to achieve. By marching, we're gonna get a combination. I mean, it just seems to me that now we don't have that. A lot of people don't even know what the democratic values are. We're running on something that our candidates have really not told us this is what we want. We assume that we want safe health care. We assume that they want to save Medicare, Medicaid, all these things we assume, but who is out there saying, well, this is what I'm gonna do? Who's fighting Donald Trump? Who's saying Trump ain't did nothing? Who is saying Obama brought us ACA? Obama brought us from the depths of recession. Where are our strong leaders? And it all goes back to being an informed electorate. Because if you don't know who to vote for, it doesn't matter if your vote is being cast. It's just what purpose does it serve?
Because on that level, all of the people that are running against him are fighting with each other.
That's right.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. It's refreshing to see a candidate that pulls the conversation back toward, listen, we're here to talk about that dude, what we want to do to get rid of him, but that's one of the flaws that we have in our system. Back to the point, and I'm going to be very brief with this, is that, having the right to vote is one thing. Voter turnout is an entirely different thing. Having somebody to vote for that's going to follow through on what you're voting for, voting them in office for, is a whole nother thing, just as you were saying. Until we can fit all of those things, those pieces together, we're going to continue to lose. We're going to continue to wind up with low voter participation. We're going to continue having people that are put in office who we think are representatives, but are actually representing their own agenda, not representing a community-wide agenda. And we, as a people, are going to continue to lose out in all of the areas of social justice: healthcare, wages, education, environment, housing, everything. We are going, because nobody's really losing but the people on the ground. Our elected officials who are not really representing us, they're working from a position of power. They're in the house. They go into the dinners, they got their spouses, and folks offering them cars and all of that, because we can't get enough people in to repeal Citizens United. So they're getting all of the perks, while the people who actually voted for them aren't getting anything. But now it has to be understood that the reason why they get away from it, or get away with it, is because the voice of the people is silent. Frederick Douglass said, "Power concedes nothing without demand. It never has, it never will." He said, in essence, that the degree to which power will abuse a people is directly correlated to the amount of abuse the people will take without reciprocation. And we just take it. We just say, okay, I'm praying for you. Man, let's get busy.
I think right now we have our legislators that feel emboldened to support particular people and then convince the people that elected them that that's the right way to go. Mm-hmm. And they keep getting, and we buy that. People buy that, and they say, oh yeah, he does make a good point. We should be thinking this way. When it's not for them. Just like I heard about a waitress that she's loving Donald Trump, and she's working 2 jobs. Mm-hmm. And then they want to cut the SNAP program. Mm-hmm. And he's bragging about how many people are off the rolls. I mean, true, a lot of people were on the rolls during President Obama's era because of that Great Depression. And then people got off. And now you have people that are buying it from the leadership that, yeah, this is the right thing. This is what we should be. You believe that. This is what you should do. And you're doing what I call voting against your own best interests.
Mm-hmm. And remember, while they're saying that those rolls are being cut, it's because it's those people are on the rolls. Those people need to get off the rolls. So he can go now and say, look, I wipe the rolls clean. Because those people, he's not realizing that those people are part of his constituency.
Right.
That are getting beat up and beat down. Mm-hmm. But as long as you use them, against those,
when it comes to the SNAP program and government assistance, there are infinitely more white people that are actually on government assistance. So when he says them,
that's right.
He's not telling the full truth. He's playing on those racist emotions once again.
And I agree with that, Kay. He's talking about how he loved the farmers, he's helping. Well, first of all, he cut off the trade to China. Mm-hmm. And then when he comes back, he puts more into it than the farmers can produce. In the meantime, he also gave the farmers more aid than what they would have normally made in the trading for the soybeans, for example. And you have farmers that will say, oh, I'm always going to vote Republican because that farm aid is a nice, you call it whatever you like, it's welfare. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then there's the racism coming back in there, where they don't want to help the poorer people, because you envision that a lot of them are African Americans or minorities, and that's the image that he's putting out there. And that, I don't want to get off track, but that's how you have the people that closing down the borders. They're the southern border. But you didn't hear them coming in from Canada, did you? No. Why not? Anyway.
But so so we've talked a lot about Trump so far. So let's turn the mirror around for a minute. Yeah. And this can go to the issue of leadership as well. And I'm going to ask this question in a way that may sound hyperbolic, but I'm doing it for dramatic effect. Okay. Is the Democratic Party our salvation? In the face of everything that we've discussed, is the Democratic Party our salvation?
Well, at the moment, the way I see the Republican Party going and the racist attitude that's being spewed from the leadership, and they're all in the, just yesterday, just chanting 4 more years and all like that. Right now, the Democratic Party is the one that's most encouraging and appealing to me, and I think it will get the most help from for African Americans. And I know back in, Dr. King used to be a Republican, and that was in the era in the 50s and early 60s when the Republican Party helped was more positive for African Americans. And so it just depends on the era you're in. Right now, the era we're in, I say the Democratic Party is more for to help.
I would say salvation is a strong word,
Yeah.
a very strong word. But I would also, I think, I don't want to say it's the lesser of two evils, but I will say that the Democratic Party has given minorities more of a platform to express their values. I don't see that when it comes to the Republican Party. Yes, I guess we have Tim Scott, who I guess the first black senator since Reconstruction in South Carolina. I'm sorry. But what has Tim Scott done for us? Like he was elected, but I mean, like really, what has he done for African Americans in the state of South Carolina? So I guess he gave us opportunity zones, but I mean, that doesn't help anybody but rich people. So long way to answer your question. I think that right now, following the Democratic Party had candidates.
Well, let me add this. Noam Chomsky said that, and he says this often, he says that the Republican Party is the most dangerous organization in human history. Okay? The Republican Party is the most dangerous organization in human history. And he says that many people will find that a rather shocking and outrageous thing to say. And if you look on the surface, he said he would agree with that characterization of his statement. But when you dig beneath the surface, I mean, is there any organization that has been almost singularly dedicated to the destruction of the human species? Okay? Now, the reason I bring that up is because I would add that there, to a very significant extent, the Democratic Party has demonstrated that if it's not the second most dangerous organization in human history, it's certainly in the top 5. If for no other reason than the fact that it has been rather weak and complicit in the actions of the Republican Party. Am I wrong?
I think you're going down a rabbit hole that kind of scares me. I would say that, I mean, we all know people, everyone in this room knows someone who's a Republican. I think there's ideologies that they have that we just don't agree with. To say that the Republican Party is the most dangerous thing on earth kind of plays into the Republicans' talking point to me, where they're basically saying Democrats just don't like us because they think we're evil, but we're not. I don't think that the Democratic Party is number 2 or possibly number 1 on that list of most dangerous things, because we are working to pass legislation to improve the environment. We're working on legislation to increase equality, be it with minorities, African Americans, LGBTQ plus community. So I don't agree with that statement.
That's, you know, that's well and good. First off, let me just remark on the issue about the Republicans, okay? Anybody who doesn't understand that healthcare is a human right and does everything he can to give everybody an equal chance to have healthcare, something's wrong with you. That's evil. Anybody who will not pass legislation that might save a life from dying from a bullet, that's evil. Anytime that you have somebody who will not pay a person according to the cost of living in the year that we're living in and fights against doing it, that's evil. Denying people the right to collectively bargain, form unions, that's evil. Anytime that you have people that are more concerned about profit or taking money in order to have for their voice, that's evil. So do I consider the Republicans? Yeah, they're the epitome. Exactly. But let me go to the other side of the fence though, this Democratic issue. You use the term salvation, which is sort of like sometimes associated with a spiritual term. So I want to use another spiritual term about the Democrats, that unless it happens, we cannot move forward. They wind up in that same pit, and that's called repentance. Because when we talk about the African American community and the African American vote, and related to the Democratic Party over the last 20 years, 30 years, they've really pimped our community dry, okay? Without pouring back in, without investing back in. And I'm definitely in favor of all of the things, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, environmental issues, pay, fighting for end gun violence, I'm for all of that. But when it comes to the African American community, the Democratic Party in America has done us wrong. And anytime that you do people wrong, that's evil. So that's my 2 cents right there.
So did we not, Trump pushed for this budget, this war budget for the Department of Defense in the United States' war machine. There were Democrats who supported that. There were Democrats who voted for that. We talked about Obama earlier. Did not drone strikes and targeted assassinations not be on the rise during Obama's administration? Was it not the Obama administration that signed into law the National Defense Authorization Act? Was it not President Obama and during his administration that he was deporting so many people that he was called the deporter in chief? Did we not have under the Clinton administration, like we talked about earlier, NAFTA, the welfare reform where welfare was, changed, and a host of other things, They've been complicit in a lot of what's been going on. I don't want it to be a perception of, good guy, bad guy, What role do we play as a black community in pushing the Democratic Party to where it needs to go as far as a policy agenda and a social justice agenda and a more moral agenda?
Yes, I think that repentance, because you're not going to move forward beyond the place you're at until you accept the fact that you have fault. And the way that the community, aside from the other issues that you mentioned, the way that the African American community is situated right now, we're still a force, but we're not going to be a force any longer that's going to be taken for granted. So just admitting that part, even admitting the other areas, we can't keep painting the picture as if we're all perfect and everything. And I digress to my first statement. I am a Democrat. I bleed blue. But it's not a perfect system. And, I saw so much wrongdoing in 2016 when I ran for Senate that I was totally taken aback by that. But since then, I've had a chance to really get in and parse the situation out and really see where the need for repentance lies at.
the comments about Barack Obama are absolutely correct under his administration, absolutely. But if we talk to most Dems, they paint over that and point the finger at the Republicans. But they're not doing this and they're not doing that. When the reality is, we can begin to break even or come back on the road to evenness if we just admit our own shortcomings.
But I think because I agree, African Americans are a force if we are able to mobilize and get out and get people out to vote. I think the last time we saw it was in Alabama with Doug Jones, when black females came out overwhelmingly and carried that election for him. I think to go down and follow what you said about repentance, I think the South Carolina Democratic Party itself needs to have a come to Jesus moment with the African American community. Because I don't think they really do much to help African Americans. They don't really sit down and discuss what issues are going on within the African American community and how we can help you. It's the only time we see them is during primary seasons for presidents, or when it's, oh God, we got to get this person out of office, get out and vote. And so when you look at millennials and you look at Generation Z, African Americans, they're not excited, or there's no enthusiasm when it comes to voting with either party. But they're like, oh, well, my mom's Democrat, I could really care less. Maybe I'm an independent. So I think if the Democratic Party of South Carolina has that come to Jesus moment, we bring in our African American leaders. We identify who those African American leaders are. We bring them in and we have a conversation. And not only have that conversation, but we actually go out to African American communities and sit down and have discussions like, hey, what's affecting you? Jamie Harrison told the story at the Shore Dinner about he went to the man's house and he said, that road has always been a dirt road. When Obama was president, when Bush was president, when Clinton was president, and Trump's president, and it will probably still be a dirt road after. Like, why should I vote for you? It was one of those things where it's like, at the time he was in the Democratic Party, I think it was like either the chair or something for the Democratic Party. Why didn't he go and talk to local individuals within that man's community and say, hey, this guy's been asking for this road to be paved for years and no one's listened to him. Like, let's get somebody on whatever city council or whatever county council it is and work to get this man's road paved. And then once he sees that the Democratic Party cares about this particular individual, he's going to continue to vote for, there will be loyalty built towards that person. I think we rely so much on the loyalty that our ancestors had, or not ancestors, but the ones who fought for civil rights, and seeing how JFK and his predecessor done to get all these things amended and the rights to vote and all that good stuff, that we forget that, hey, that was that particular generation, but the millennials and the Generation Z and those to come after aren't seeing the effects of what politicians are doing. And so there is no more loyalty to the Democratic Party.
Any last comments? We're going to move on to another subject, but does anyone have any comments?
I just want to say that's one of the reasons why the voter participation is low, because you've got 18 to 40-year-olds who were dragged to the polls by their parents or their grandparents, and they said, well, you got to vote, you know, people died to vote, you know, to get the vote, and we're voting for such and such. And the child grew up seeing people getting voted for, and the communities around them been imploding on themselves, you know. Nothing ever got better. So the kid, as they got older, is like, why vote? You know, my parents are fool. Why they keep running up behind them people, you know? Yeah. I'm not gonna run up behind them, you know, because when you vote, nothing happens. Nothing good ever happens.
On the other hand, I think we also have young people now, younger generations that don't vote because they have it good sometimes. Like they have access now to college education, because some of them have They're first generation where their parents can afford to help pay for their college education. So those kids are now kind of laid back. They don't see that struggle that those parents and grandparents went through. And somehow or the other, we have to get it through to them that people died for you to have this right to go set your foot on a college campus where it's integrated, where you don't just always have to go to this school over here. You don't have used textbooks. So
we have to get them, I believe, to know that there was a price paid.
Mhm.
We need to have the privilege that you have now to sit at a lunch counter, to go into a store, to work in a bank, to have to live in a neighborhood that you can live in because of the money that you make. I mean, it's so important that we know our history, because if we don't know where we've been, we don't know where we're going. So we need to know, we need to get our young people know about the struggle. When I was growing up, the first book I was allowed to read was Up From Slavery. My parents made sure that I knew the history of it, about the division between the house nigger and the field nigger. That sometimes the house nigger was the one that was grinding up glass, putting it in the master's food, and they were wondering why the master was having bleeding ulcers, or at that time, because they were killing the people and running the plantation, and nobody thought about it, because they were going in all the time to run the plantation. They were buying the supplies, they were taking care of everything, so nobody knew. But there's a history that we should be proud of. They made us think that we were lazy, that we were no good, after they freed us. But before they freed us, we were hardworking. We worked from sunup to sunset. We nursed their babies, and we bought into that stereotype that we're lazy, we're shiftless. Even the movies they portrayed back then. But now we know, that they needed us. They needed us. They raised our children. Those babies sucked on those nannies' breasts, gave them nourishment. But once they got freed, we were lazy. We didn't do nothing. We don't know nothing. And that, we need to know our history. And maybe if we could get them to be instilled in our history, then maybe they could understand that Fannie Lou Hamer got beat short of her life getting the right to vote. Freedom Summer, buses were set on fire getting the right to vote. We need to, instill in them that there's something, there's something to be proud of. We need to get out here and make sure that their children will have an opportunity, because the way Trump is going, we may be back there and not having the right to vote, not being able to do this, not having good jobs, and they need to know that it's important that they vote.
We need to create those opportunities, to pour into our children our history, because what we have done is we have left it up to the school system to teach them about Black history. The Black history that we have been taught is that we were lazy, that we were nobodies, that we know nothing. I believe I was in college before I ever even thought past the beginning of slavery, because when I was in school, that's all we were taught was from the beginning of slavery on up. And I took an African diaspora class, and I learned about all of these things that I had never in my life heard of, or even could have conceived that was who we were. So we have to create opportunities first for us to tell our children who we were and who we still are. We can't keep depending on other people to do that for us. Secondly, we can tell them about the struggle of Martin Luther King and the civil rights and all of those things, but what we have to recognize is that they're struggling now too. And before they care what we think, they have to think that we care. So while we are telling them about who we are and what the strong legacy that we come from, we have to understand that they are hurting now as well, and we have to address that too. Because they can't relate to what Martin Luther King and Malcolm X went through, although they are being oppressed probably to the same or greater magnitude. It's different. So we have to teach them how they are being oppressed now and what they can do about it, and not, because I hear so often we talk to young kids and we say, Martin Luther King died and Malcolm X died, but there are some people recently who died. You know, we have people who were protesting in the Black Lives Matter in Ferguson, and these people are dying. They are being found shot. They are being found hanged, and nobody has any answers. So we don't even have to go so far back to say that people have died for this. We could just go back to that and say, you know, people have died fighting for you to be okay, or for your children to be okay. So it's great to teach them about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and who we were. We need to do that, but we also need to teach them about the people who are their age and their generation who died for causes that are affecting them now as well.
That's why it's so important that we need to keep our young people, millennials, whoever, informed. Because a lot of them sleep. The police shootings, a lot of them don't even, you know, they say, oh, well, hell, you know, it happened again here. They're not thinking that it's really affecting them. That's their lives.
I don't agree with that statement. Though.
Oh, I see it.
I think the millennials and Generation Z are very in tune to what's going on. We don't follow it in the same manner. We're not out marching, but we are sitting out our texts, our tweets, our Facebooks, because that's what we do now. It's a different time. I think what we failed to do is recognize the retrograde of African American wealth and the retrograde of just Black influences in our communities. And what I was thinking about while you were speaking earlier about gentrification is going back to Atlantic Beach, which was the Black Pearl of South Carolina, where it was very popular. Like everyone would go down there because Black people couldn't go onto Myrtle Beach. And then if you go down there today, it's like, it's cool because they do, you know, Black Bike Week, Memorial Bike Week once a month or once a year. But I mean, do people really go out there? Like, why is it not as built up as, you know, your Myrtle Beach or your North Myrtle Beach? It looks completely different. And so if we could get our young people to be inspired by those stories that you were telling, and then taking Black wealth and reinvesting it back in those particular communities, I think there'd be a difference. There'd be a whole attitude change in how we can affect things here in Horry County.
I respectfully disagree.
So we're going to stay on the theme of reaching out to the youth. The next subject, because time is evaporating, is education. Okay, I'm going to read this question because I want to make sure I get the point out correctly. The Horry County school system has the need for a lot of improvements. According to the latest data, Black students are disproportionately represented among students subjected to exclusionary disciplinary practices, expulsions, OSS, ISS. Additionally, Black teachers are woefully underrepresented, with roughly 5 to 6% among the teaching population. This lack of Black representation has had and has negative effects on Black student performance in the classroom. So we want to deal with, this is a two-part question. What's the reasoning or behind how our young Black students are being treated in the school system, and what solutions can we provide or push forward to solve that? And number two, how do we get more Black teachers into the school system?
So, that's a big question. I think as far as getting more Black teachers in Horry County school system, I don't think it's a lack of Black teachers applying. I think it's a lack of those people doing the hiring, considering those people for those positions. And I'm sure you have data to support that as well. When it comes to how they treat our children as it relates to discipline in schools, I think that's where parents need to be more involved in and more informed. And I think that goes back to the way we are viewed. Because I have 4 sons and 1 daughter. And my sons, 2 older sons, have been very tall for their ages. So they were already, they could do something that a kid that was not black did, like get upset in a situation where you should be upset, and the teacher would automatically fear them, as opposed to another kid, they would coddle them. I've seen this in Horry County schools. I have witnessed it with my own eyes, and it just baffled me as to how you could see this kid as a threat and this kid as needing sympathy when they both were having the same type of issues. So I think it would have to go back to one of the things I like to talk about when I'm speaking to crowds is women, because women, we are the first teachers. We carry the babies, we nurture them. And I always ask white women to teach your sons to not fear my son. If you say you're my ally, teach your sons to not see my son as a threat. And I think it starts there first, because teachers don't just start teaching and look at little black kids like that. That's something that has been ingrained in them for a long time. And so it starts with white women, because I believe women are the first teachers, teaching their sons and daughters not to see us as a threat or as less than. And I always question them, even when I spoke at the Women's March this year, what are you teaching your children? You know, are you being complicit by being silent? Or do you come to these events and you want to seemingly be united in what our cause is, but when you go home and your husband says build a wall, you're quiet? Or do you feel like, oh, you want to touch my hair, but you don't feel like the workplace is the appropriate spot for natural hair? So I just believe that it starts first individually, but also I remember when I was younger, if I got in trouble, our pastor came to the schools to check on us, to see what was going on in the schools. I don't see that anymore. I don't see the community gathering around our children to ensure that they are being treated fairly. And so until we as the village get back to that, I think it'll continue to be that way, because I don't see people changing just because they should. Most people don't do that. Most people change because they become uncomfortable. And until we make the teachers and the school board and the principals uncomfortable, it's just going to be what it has been.
There are a lot of layers to this question, a lot of layers when we're talking about the educational process, the educational system, those who have the power in the educational system, who our principals are, who our school boards are. And a lot of it has to do with cultures and ethnicities not understanding other cultures and ethnicities. But we know traditionally that that these boards are in place, or these principals are in place, and they get the jobs because they have the qualifications or a bunch of letters after their names. But the reality is, when it comes to actually set policy and procedure over a group of children that they don't really understand, they don't understand the where they come from, who they are, their background, or anything. We're just starting to understand or look more at PTSD in children, because of the environmental situations that our kids in urban areas are coming up with. But you take a principal who has never been exposed to that environment, and now sees this in her classrooms, the first thing that they're going to say is, we need to discipline this child. When the reality is, this child comes from an environment, lives in a home where there's gunfire, gun violence, drugs, poverty, no domestic violence, nothing to eat, and everything. And that child, just the only thing they know is school is a refuge. Now that this child gets to school, and instead of being a refuge, they're being punished. There's some changes that definitely need to be made, and recruiting of black teachers over time has got to be a part of that equation. But we can't get to the black teachers until we raise up black teachers. That's one of the biggest problems. And it was something that related back to the previous question too, is that, we have to begin to really, instead of getting to college and getting black history, instead of taking a course in black history,
Black history should be a part of history in America. When our child goes to first grade and they get a history book, it shouldn't be an exclusive history book that doesn't have anything to do with them in it. It should be the real history. What we've done over time is, and that translates into adults with bias, both black and white, is that we, from an early age, we educate our children in bias. We put bias on our children especially through history. When you open up a history book from a young child, first grade up, you open up the history book, everybody in the book looks like you that's doing something. That's subconsciously feeding that mind, that ego. But then that other child is looking in there saying, all the people, none of the people in here, it's one or two people in here that look like me that's doing something. What is going on? And this is being fed over time. And when we look at black children who get older and they don't have self-esteem, we stop and we wonder why, when you just told them they're not worth anything from a young age. While white children, where that comes from, now you're embedding privilege in them as they get older. So until we break up that systemic nature of bias that's being taught to our children, it's hard enough fighting against the stuff we can't get away from. Because there are certain subliminal things that are impressed on the mind anyway when it comes to color. You know, the good which is white, the bad which is black. Good guys wear white. You know, you got black magic and white magic. Black magic is the bad magic. You know, you got angel food cake and devil's food cake. Those are things we're not going to be able to get away from. But at least we can start our children out educating them on a fair plane about history. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Tell the truth about Colonel Custer, that he was a mass murderer. Yeah. Tell the truth about him, you know? And then let the children, as they get older, decide if they want to be racially biased, instead of us giving them bias from an early age. And I think that opening up the doors for that equality will open up the doors for further opportunities in life and career opportunities too. Because now you don't have the mindset of I can't go somewhere or I can't be this, while others have that mindset that I can be that. You know, so we have to change that around. I don't know if I talked about the question, but I dropped something out there.
Well, when you talked about students and behavior, one thing that we might want to consider in Horry County in particular is the zero tolerance policy. That it doesn't work. There's research to show that students it doesn't breed positive environments in your school. When you remove the student and have an alternative school for a small infraction, that the problems still are at that school. It's just you remove the child. And schools, I think we need more counselors in your schools to work with students. They need to have sessions with students, the whole class, the whole school, where they teach about positive school environment, how to diffuse situations, how to eliminate bullying. This helps at-risk students. A lot of times when you have a zero tolerance policy, it usually affects students with disabilities that may or may not have been diagnosed. And then you also need teachers that have been taught how to diffuse situations. And because as an educator, I once knew a student, she would love to fight anybody at any time. And I can remember how I diffused her, and she couldn't believe that I actually gave her, when she was trying to fight someone, I kept this other child in the classroom. I kept her in the classroom and the other child to go out, because this child, she had disabilities. And so I said, I have to finish teaching this lesson. And so I did. And then when I go out to hear both sides, I make them talk at one talk, you listen to the other, like that. By the time they're through talking it out, they don't want to fight anymore. So that was because I had been taught, as an educator in that district, we'd been taught how to diffuse kids. And we didn't send them home for fighting just then. And we had very little fighting. Also for getting more black teachers in the schools. that starts in high school, in the elementary and middle school. Training people with the idea that it's okay to be an educator. Also, you're gonna get more black teachers if you increase the pay. Let's put the truth out there.
That's right.
There are other professions that start out at $50,000, $60,000, and they went to the same college as the teacher that's graduating with debt, and you want to start them out in $35,000 and say, okay, that's good for you? No. People are getting smart. And also the stress of teachers. You are not going to attract young black people or white, any of them. Nowadays it's hard to get them, any race now, to teach because of the school violence.
Also been to awards.
Right. I often say, and that I got out of education at the right time, right before, as they started getting to the thick of all these school shootings. But we have to work at attracting people, saying it's okay, it's a good, honorable profession like it used to be a teacher. And you need the people in the community to respect the teachers also.
That's a whole other issue there.
I'll look at it from a legislative perspective. So when we look at these communities that are predominantly black, again, going back to your West Lois, your Bucksports, your 1P, portions of Homewood, who is representing them on the school board?
Nobody.
There are, I think maybe Graham is the only black face, or is she gone? Graham?
No, she's there. She's there.
But it's who's representing them. And so it's finding African Americans who live in those particular communities and motivating them, inspiring them, and getting them to run for the school board, and then providing them the support that they need to get elected. And once you get that face on the school board, and once you get that voice there, then that's how things start to change. Because I mean, we could call till we're blue in the face to the superintendent, Mr. Maxey, and say, hey, you need to hire more black teachers, you need to hire more black principals, you need to hire more black teachers. But at the end of the day, maybe he'll hire one or two, but it's not gonna change. But if you have people that are sitting on that board, holding him accountable, providing oversight, and saying, hey, we're looking at the amount of teachers that are currently in Horry County, and it's a low percentage, we need to get more in, or you're gonna have to go, and we're gonna have to find our superintendent that's gonna do that, then I think that's how you fix that situation. And maybe I'm just a dreamer.
You have a good point, but it can't be getting them in there.
Just one quick point. You know, I'm all good with having, you know, black faces on the school board and these different boards, but you can't get up there and think just because you're a black face on the board, that's supposed to represent some type of change. You know, you can't be up on that board and scared to open your mouth and voting along with what everyone else is doing. What's the use in having you up there at all?
Right, but it's finding the right people who's gonna be willing to stand up against the status quo and say, hey, this isn't right. You guys need to be more equitable when it comes to hiring African Americans or other minorities in these positions as teachers or principals or whatever.
I understand what you're saying, but here's the problem that we have in probably all of South Carolina, is gerrymandering. The districts are drawn up such that it's almost like you look at, it's R+9 or whatever, and they do it so that the candidates, they say they're nonpartisan when you're running for the school board or whatever positions. They are. They know who just like, give you an example, just in the District 1, where Holly Hannaford just resigned, you had several quality candidates that applied for that position. Who did they pick? Another Republican. And you had some Dems that were in education. I know 2 of them. They applied, they interviewed, they were truly, in my mind, quality candidates, I doubt if they would give them a shot.
I know,
we have, okay,
let me just finish the point.
one quick point.
When it comes to that, because you said higher, and it is,
It's
for a
for
school
school,
board,
right.
it's an elected position. So then we failed, I'm gonna say it, we failed as a party by not standing up to the school board and saying, hey, no, you will have an election, and we will let the electorate decide who is gonna sit on that position.
You're gonna have an election, but they appointed the person to fill out the
Until
term.
the election.
And now,
You
so
gotta
that
add-
gives them an advantage.
But is that the rule?
You gotta add in the disenfranchised voter who is not going to vote. So even when you have the qualified candidates, the people that you want, getting the vote out, that's a whole nother thing.
So,
Having a candidate is one thing, getting the vote out is another.
okay, so let's move on.
Okay.
Economics, okay, and employment, okay? All right. So we're going to be entering kind of a lightning round. So we need the answers to be shorter, okay?
All right.
All right, because we want to cover as much as we can. So I'm going to just read off a couple of stats here pertaining to South Carolina. According to the Center for American Progress, nearly 1 out of 4 Black South Carolinians lives in poverty. In South Carolina, the child poverty rate is 22.3%. In South Carolina, the median net worth of white households is $133,683, while the median net worth of black households is $14,413. According to the Institute for Policy Studies and the Corporation for Enterprise Development, they showed that the average black family in the United States would need 228 years to build the wealth of a white family today. Okay, so what do we need to do to close the racial wealth gap, specifically in South Carolina, but in general, all over the nation?
A miracle, based on whatever time frames you're looking at. We didn't just get this way. Slavery has been an institution in America for 400 years. And the wealthy of America are trying their best to make sure that they stay wealthy, and those who are not stay in slavery. And so one of the ways that we overcome that is we make sure that we get people in office that are going to level the playing field, who are going to fight on behalf of the people. That's one sure way to win. But of course, all those other variables come in, disenfranchised voters and all of those things, good candidates, good people is going to represent. But to actually look at closing the economic gap in America, I don't see that happening for quite a while. Aside from the fact that if we have more people that are in our communities that are going to teach about empowerment within the community system, how do we circulate, especially in the African American community, how do we circulate black dollars within the black community in order to build economic wealth? That's the only way. We talk about Black Wall Street, and we want to look back to that era, which Black Wall Street was not only in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but many, many places, and quite a few places in South Carolina. But we need Black Wall Street right now. We can't keep looking at history on that other than the fact that it was done. And the way that we do that, the way we close that wealth gap, is by beginning to make sure that our money is circulating. One of the ways is to make sure that we're not settling for $7.25 an hour when we know in this dispensation of time, probably more like $22, $23 an hour is what's necessary. So I'll take 15 right now. And we will begin if we're going to spend it within our community.
We also need to know financial responsibility. We need to know how to make a budget. We need to know how to spend the money that we're making.
Thank you.
That's so important. We need to know if we're going to help our communities. We need to make sure that we have our rent paid, bills paid, before we do anything else. And I mean, it's good to say I want to go out there and do it, but if I don't have a place to live, I'm not paying my car insurance. I'm getting, and my house is going in foreclosure because I don't know how to take care of my money. Then I can't be economic, I can't be financially responsible for anything in my community. Cause I gotta take care of this right here first.
I think we need to start fostering or looking at what's the next boom. So right now, the tech industry is the biggest boom. Are we focused on teaching our kids on how to use technology, how to design things where they're creating the next Facebook or the next Amazon, stuff like that? Are we doing that? Or are we providing them in a location? Or are we providing jobs within the community where they can work on tech that has higher pay versus saying, oh, hey, just become an RN or go to medical school, where kids normally not that many people actually go to medical school to become doctors or become lawyers. So it's finding the next boom and making sure that our kids are prepared for that so they can create wealth.
Okay. Next question. We're just gonna go around the table, 1 minute each. Yes or no, and why? Reparations.
Yes. I don't know how, have no solutions on to how to measure what, where, when, and all of that stuff. But I do think for all that has been taken from us as a people, we are owed something. I don't feel like we should have to beg. I don't feel like it should be crumbs, and not even necessarily that it should be financial compensation, but there should be some form of reparation.
I'm not sure.
No.
Why?
I don't think it will solve the problem when it comes to disparity in wealth. I think it will create more divisiveness between the ethnic groups. I think all of a sudden Black people are now getting reparations. What is your Trump supporter now saying, oh my God, the only reason they're getting this handout is because they're Black. So I don't see how it will, I don't see how it will fix or solve the problem.
I'm torn, but I say no, because I do have some slave owners were Black. And a lot we tend to forget that. And so how do you determine who's gonna get the reparations? What's gonna be your criteria? So I'm torn, but I want you to think about that.
And the number of Black slave owners was a very small number compared to the white.
Some.
There were some, yes. I say yes, but not necessarily monetarily. I think that we need to be innovatively looking at how we can actually settle the debt, because that's a debt. There was work done and nobody ever got paid for it. That's a debt, and the debt needs to be paid. But we can look at innovative methods in order to make sure that maybe if we, and then proving it is a whole other thing. The sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners, who's who. But if it can be proven, then maybe, I know we're moving for college, tuition for all, but, maybe, education, more money, that money pumped into the educational system in poor communities or African-American communities, something of that sort. I'm definitely not one that's going to say, give people who don't have that same financial literacy course or an understanding of the responsibility that we have to manage money. I'm definitely not in favor of saying, here's some money, go ahead. Yeah. I'm not in favor of the UBI that Dr. King talked about, the universal
Basic income?
Basic income, yeah, I'm not really in favor of that, because until you teach people how to manage money, all they're gonna do is go ahead on and do what I used to do with it. And that's when I'm going to see the dope man, I'm going to buy me some liquor, I'm gonna get me some nice clothes, and everything.
Okay, so I want to speak very quickly, just ask a quick question about the class differences within the Black community. Okay, I know there was one Pew Research poll that came out that indicated that the Black upper middle class, I guess some sociologists would define them as what we call the Black bourgeoisie, the Black upper middle class. They tend to look down on Black workers and the Black poor in very much the same way that white America has. Are there stark differences in is the class rift in the black community so severe that it may be a stumbling block to pushing forward a black agenda?
I'll go. I'll go. I think this is another throwback to after, post-civil rights, and when the black bourgeoisie was created because of opportunities based on race, affirmative action and things of that sort. I think that now, and I'm going to relate to the millennials and the Gen X, Y, and Zers, that now that it's not a matter of that separation of bourgeoisie now. I think that they're more focused now on equality for all, as opposed to I made it, I'm good. I think that they're more into giving back and elevating the community as a whole. And I might be speaking out of place, but that's what I know of my younger generation that I've been interacting with for a while.
I would completely agree. I think I see the black bourgeoisie here more in South Carolina than what I saw it when I was living in New York and in Washington State. I think here you can definitely see how people are frowned upon if they were raised by a single mother. If they decide not to go to college, how people look down on them. I think going to your question, until we as a community come together and break that tide here in South Carolina, we won't be able to grow or make ourselves a stronger presence here in South Carolina. We won't have that same effect that Martin Luther King had. And I don't know, maybe that future leader needs to come from the poor class and inspire not only the poor class to rise, but the bourgeoisie to follow behind them. So.
Well, listen, a graduate of an HBCU, it was drilled in our head that when you leave these hallowed walls, you are required to give back. You are to help your fellow man. You are your brother's keeper. And I still believe that, and I see that happening with people that I associate with. I know I come from a very large family, and we're taught to give back, to help out. And we have different levels of economic achievement, shall we say. And the ones that don't have as much, they're not looked down upon. You try to help them, but not necessarily in terms of handout, but you try to educate them and help them. And I think that's a key part that's missing in our society as a whole, is educating people about self-control, about trying to achieve. It's okay to learn and to be smart at school. And so we still have to get that across.
I think I see more, briefly, I see more division or less of that working together, not between black bourgeoisie and those who are not there, have not achieved. I see more division between the church folks and the community, you know? I'm gonna just drop that and leave it alone.
No, you're not gonna leave it alone. Really quick, going around the table. What role should the black church play? Start with you.
Oh, the black church needs to, first off, get off of their high horse and get out in the community and start helping the community where they're at, not where they think they're supposed to be at. You know, if we can just overcome the fact that everybody is different and you don't have to live up to my level for me to help you, then, or be who I say you are, just because your pants is sagging, I love you anyway. Well, that's what the church needs to get to.
Should be a pillar of the community. You're helping the people, and it's a good place for training and welcoming people as they are to help them to become what they should be.
I mean, I can't say it better than what they said it, so I'm not even gonna try.
I think we should the black church should stop judging.
Yes.
You know, we're not here to judge.
Yes.
You know, in my church we always say, we're not here to condemn, we're here to convict. And that's where we stand as a black church. We should get out of the four walls, go into the community, teach our people about family, teach people about love, teach people about how to educate, how to be responsible for one another. Because that's Christians. I'm not just being religious. I want to be a Christian. I want to be Christ-like. I want to love. I'm terrified that with Donald Trump, children are still going to be in cages 20 years from now. And that's something, if you say you're religious, I can understand that. But if you say you're a Christian, why are you not outraged that those children were put in cages?
That's right.
Why are you not outraged that black people still are being shot by police in the street? Why are you not outraged that the military, there is 56 bills on the Senate floor regarding our military? How many homeless veterans do we have? How are you not outraged as a Christian and getting out in the street and telling all your members, let's get out on Sunday morning, let's go canvass and knock on some doors so we can get people registered to vote?
So, church.
Come on.
Come on now.
Come on, somebody.
I think the church has become one of the biggest diseases in the black community. I feel like it has become big business. I know more people that have been hurt within the church than helped. And so, while I feel like they have the potential to be a great resource and asset to the black community, that is not what I see them as. And I think that's all I'm gonna say about it.
So we only have a few more minutes left, so we're gonna go around the table, and I want you all to speak very briefly about what you all are doing in the community, things that the people who'll be watching this need to know about, any events or what have you that are coming up. Just give you the opportunity to promote the work you're doing or anything like that.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you so much for putting this forum together. I really do appreciate, being here and being invited here. For me, Pastor Dixon, coming off this mayoral race right now, I decided to get back to my virtual organization, which is the Coalition People United to Take Back Our Community. And the only thing that qualifies anybody to be a part of it is that you're not a keyboard warrior. You're not a Facebook ninja. That if something going on, you're gonna get up and get involved. So instead of staying in this virtual area, because it's just all virtual, now I'm moving to get established as a 501c3 and a C4, because as a C3, your voice is limited. But as a C4, you can say what you want to do and then do what you want to do. So I'm never going to have the government to tell me what I can and can't say. And even when I had my own church, I didn't file for 501c3 because I wasn't going to let the government tell me what I can or can't say. So that's where I'm at. Once it gets up and running, we will be definitely dealing with the issues of school boards and school board in the education system in Charleston County, the worst county in South Carolina for schools. We have 9 of the worst schools in South Carolina, and 8 of them are in my city. So we'll be dealing with that, dealing with gun violence, dealing with housing, all of the social justice areas. This is the Coalition People United to Take Back Our Community.
I'm doing several things. I'm working on the purge voter list, trying to contact people that names have been potentially moved from the voter registration file. So I'm contacting those. I'm also working to register people to vote. I'll be planning to participate at the gun show, where we'll be marching across from the gun show this weekend coming up at Myrtle Beach Convention Center, because we're trying to promote and get our legislators and people to think about passing sensible gun legislation. And I'm passionate about registering voters. And so I've done a lot. Last election I did a lot of canvassing, and I'm getting ready to get right back at it.
Yeah, so I work with the Young Democrats here in Horry County. And our main goal is just to get more young people active and excited about voting. And I think that's the challenge here, being in a ruby red county, is trying to go out and find young people who are excited about our Democratic candidates. So in April, we're looking at trying to bring Jamie Harrison, as well as the District 7 congressional candidates here, and to talk to young people either at Coastal or Georgetown Tech. So that's our pretty big event coming up in the next coming week. So I'll keep you posted.
I am the president of the Carolina Forest Dems. We are interested in getting people registered to vote. Also during Black History Month on the February the 16th, we are doing a community voter registration at our church. We will have a table, we will have history there, we will have voter registration forms. We are going to try to get everyone in our community because our church is surrounded by the Race Path community in Myrtle Beach. We're trying to get every unregistered voter registered. And that's our goal on February the 16th. Immediately after morning service, we will have a table and a display with all our candidates and any voter information that you will have. And that's what I will be doing in Black History Month.
So my organization is called I Am Enough, and again, we mentor and empower. So what I'm doing for Black History Month is a 5K. It's going to be on February the 29th. It's called Run for the Culture. And what happened is I volunteered for the Myrtle Beach Marathon last year at the finish line. And I noticed some kids running. Some ran the full marathon, which is like 23 miles. Some ran the half marathon, which is 14 miles. So I just noticed that as they came across, people were cheering for them, or some of the adults that finished turned around and ran the rest of the race with the kids. And so after being there for a few hours, I noticed that I didn't see any Black kids come across the finish line. And I was just like, wow, our kids need to know what that's like when you're tired and you can see the finish line, but you don't feel like you can make it, or you don't think anybody cares enough to come back and help you, make it to where you need to be. So we're having a 5K. It's called Run for the Culture, and the purpose is to empower and encourage Black and brown children. It's February 29th. It's going to be at Loris High School. It's only $10 to participate. We're going to have a running celebration, free haircuts, food, and lots of other things. So they have to answer 2 questions on their registration form. The first question is, what are you running from? Is it gun violence? Is it poverty? Is it one of your parents are incarcerated or abusing drugs? Whatever it is you're running from, that's your start line. The second question is, what are you running to? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to be the next president or an entrepreneur? Do you want to be the first person in your family to graduate high school? That's your finish line, because you need to know why you need to begin running. But when you get tired and you want to give up, you need to understand why you need to keep running. And that is what I'm doing to create an opportunity for us as a village, not just Black and brown people, but all of us to pour into that particular group of children. And again, it's all inclusive. Anyone can participate, but I want them to understand that the purpose of this run is to encourage that group of children.
And people can donate too, right?
Oh yes, you can donate at it's paypal.me/YesIamEnough, or Cash App. It is Yes I Am Enough. It's a little $, and then it's Yes I Am Enough. You can visit the website. It's yesiamenough.com. On the events page, it's up there. You can donate by just sponsoring a kid. You can donate in kind, whether it's water, or if you want to be one of the volunteers at the finish line, encouraging them, or on their last lap, just encouraging them, rooting for them, cheering for them. Whatever it is that you want to donate, whether it's monetary, whether it's servicing goods, or just your time, we welcome it.
As we wrap up, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank everyone for participating. Just 2 quick things. One of the major fights that we have is fighting the mass incarceration, the rise of mass incarceration. And I believe that's one of the premier civil rights issues of our time. And I want to shout out 2 organizations that is dealing with this kind of school to prison pipeline. One organization is dealing with it on one end, the entry, and the other organization is dealing with it on the exit, okay? I want to shout out the Coalition for Youth Justice, Sister Tracy Tucker and others doing a magnificent job advocating for our young people in the school system. and making sure they don't fall prey to being criminalized. I want to shout out also on that side, I want to shout out also every black girl as well. On the other end, I want to shout out the Free South Carolina movement, who's been doing a lot of advocacy for our incarcerated brothers and sisters who have been victimized by this racist war on drugs. And I just want to hold up that shirt, because this is extremely important that we understand that the most vital thing is advocating for those who are the least of these. And we cannot forget about them. They are just as important to a black agenda as everything else that we've talked about tonight. Okay?
Can I add somebody on there? Shout out to Lester Young and Working Futures and the Ban the Box movement in South Carolina, because we got to get that box banned.
All right. So once again, I want to thank everyone, and it was a great conversation.
Thank you, guys.